Hey guys, to help Around the Forums host the website and travel, we've introduced a universal service fee for in-depth coverage, including this video. The goal is to be transparent and unbiased. This is not an endorsement. It's a privilege to serve you. Let's get into it. Hey guys, what's going on? So I am here on beautiful Lake Washington here in this greater Seattle area, checking out a really cool bike called the eVelo Aries. And I'm here with my man, John. John.
Hey, Mikey, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, so John is here from eVelo. He's going to walk us through a little bit about the bike, but as a general idea, this bike is definitely made for kind of like the go anywhere, do anything, kind of off-road-esque, but mostly kind of a comfort bike. So it doesn't have a whole lot of grip on the tires, but it definitely has a lot of other options for comfort. I mean, you do have the dual suspension, there's the dampener right there, and you also have like a really high stem. You've got the handlebars that kind of come back to you, a really comfortable set of gears. We'll talk about that in some detail. So even though it's definitely has kind of like this aggressive look to it as a bicycle, it's actually really comfortable. You can get this seat post down pretty low. Ooh, look at that. It goes all the way down there. You have some space here for the light and all of that, so you can get this thing super comfortable. You got the travel up front, you got 100 millimeters. So yeah, this bike definitely has a lot of versatility, I guess I would say. Not so much for commuting, you know, it doesn't have space for a rack or so, but if you just want something for kind of like some general adventure that you don't have to worry about kind of the terrain that you're in, something, you know, kind of like this, if you're going to start off on the grass or get onto the road, you have a lot of options with this bike. So let's go ahead and jump into the mechanical details and we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so in true EBR fashion, we'll go ahead and start up at the front of the bike. One thing I forgot to mention is actually that this is the Aries mid-drive. So the principal difference, of course, is that there is another eVelo Aries and they have a motor in the back. This kind of looks like a motor, but we'll get to that in a minute. This one has the motor in the middle of the bike, but that's not the only difference. Other differences include the brakes, the gears in the back, and a lot of other touch points to it that make the bike at a different price point. So this bike, kind of consider it the mid-drive version, but also consider it scaled up as far as componentry from the Aries hub drive. So kind of a little bit of a background there. So yeah, the mechanical specs up in the front, we'll just start at the tippy front with these tires. So these tires, like I said, don't have a whole lot of mountain bike grip, so you probably wouldn't take this on anything serious off-road. But look at how wide that is. This is actually a 26-inch wheel, but it's 3 inches wide, and you can tell it has a really tall profile to it. So the actual total height from floor to the tippy top is not 26, just the wheel. So that 3-inch wide tire gives a lot of comfort and also a lot of surface area. So even though it doesn't have the knobs on it per se to try to get more grip on the road, it does have more surface area, which can provide some good stability when you're maneuvering around. So these also have a Kevlar belt in them, kind of like right along here along the tread to kind of prevent a flat tire from happening in the first place, which is really cool. You don't have a reflective stripe on the side, so again, it's not, you know, the most commuter bike as it stands. You could probably upgrade it if you wanted it to, but then again, you know, the bike is definitely set up for this kind of purpose, for kind of go anywhere. So right here in the center of the front here, you do have the 5mm through axle. It's actually threaded. Use a little tool to kind of get that guy out of there. And the brakes, we'll get to the brakes in 1 second. One thing I did want to mention also while we're here is the wheels. So the rims themselves actually are pretty wide. Is that 45?
Yeah, it's 45 millimeters wide.
Okay, it's about 45 millimeters wide, or it is 45 millimeters wide. That gives a pretty good shape to the tire. So it's kind of common to see a wider tire that's like stretched, or that's kind of ballooning out, and then it kind of sinks into a really small width for a rim. But this one's pretty wide, so that gives you a lot better shape to the tire itself. Schrader valve on that, by the way. So the brakes, so these are a 160mm rotor for the brakes, both front and the back. You have a set on either side that are the same. These are a hydraulic disc brake, the Tektro Auriga, that actually has the motor inhibitor built into the lever. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit when we get into the controls. But this is a dual piston caliper which squeezes onto the rotor right there. I like them a lot. You get them set up and boy, they're ready to go forever. I think I rode for far too long without adjusting my brakes when I had a similar set, just like that one. You're supposed to get them serviced, but they kept going. So this is a Suntour XCM spring suspension. You do have some controls up top, like the lockout and the preload adjustment up there. And the stanchions do have 100mm travel on there. On the crown up here for the suspension, you also have a mount for the light. I'm told that from the guys at eVelo here, from John, my man, that they actually have a very low failure rate for this plastic mount. So it's something else I learned here, but this is the mount for the light that's actually integrated into the electric system that we'll get to. Also has a reflector up front, which is really nice, good to be seen. So coming up from the stem, nothing too amazing there. You have an 1.125" non-tapered head or up there. So on the top here, this is actually pretty cool, and I'm going to ask John to tell us a little bit more about it. When I was measuring this, I thought this went up really high, and it's actually done custom. Is that right, John?
That's correct. The custom stem that we have made, that's called the eVelo Stargazer, and the basic concept behind it is we wanted a stem that provided as much comfort as possible. We've spec'd adjustable stems for a long time, and the issue that we ran into, they add some complexity both in setting the bike up and also in maintaining them over time. They'll come loose if you're riding the bike quite a bit. And what we found is almost all customers tend to take the adjustable stems and put them as high as possible. So we thought, why not design a stem that's already in the default position to be up as high as possible. You can see we also have some headset spacers here that puts it up even higher. If the customer does want to lower it, they can remove the spacers. But to be honest, it's something that rarely comes up. Most folks like to be in a high upright position, but it reduces the complexity, adds a little more stability by having the solid stem versus the adjustable.
Great. And so, yeah, that's actually something that, like I said, I noticed when I was doing the measurements for the bike is this goes up really high. And like John was saying, this is for comfort. Definitely the kind of the overall theme of the bike is for comfort, and that's going up pretty high. And I measured it about 65 degrees from level. For the height of it. Again, that's kind of a a measurement that can be done many different which ways to cut a sandwich. But I actually like the name of this stem is called the Stargazer, which I thought fit in with the Aries for the name of the bike. Kind of a cool celestial theme to it. So the handlebars actually have a bit of a back sweep to them as well. So meaning that instead of just a straight bar like a like a broomstick or something, it actually kind of comes back, has a little bit of a rise, about 20 millimeters, 30 millimeters or so, and they come back to meet you. So you're not trying to reach out, throwing your weight forward. So definitely, again, one of those small things that makes it a very comfortable bike. Continuing on, they actually have the ergonomic grips on both sides to kind of help reduce fatigue for short and long-term driving, which is, again, more comfort. And I promised I'd talk about the brakes a little bit. So this, of course, is the reservoir for the hydraulic brakes. There's actually a little cable coming out right through here. This little cable is actuated by pulling on the brake handles. So when you pull on the brake handles a little bit, actually sends an electric signal through this wire down to the motor to stop the motor from powering when you pull on the brakes. That way you're not powering the brakes you're not powering the motor at the same time that you're trying to stop the bike with the brakes in the first place, so you're never fighting against it. That's a pretty cool safety feature that they have in here. While we're up front, they do have some nice waterproof connections up in the front of the bike, and also for the light. So that's something I kind of glossed over a little bit. This is really cool. I have not quite seen this yet in my many travels. This is a quick disconnect for the light. So the light actually is, one of the points that's kind of sensitive when you have an electric bike and you're packing it around, say in the back of a truck, or especially if you have a folding bike and you fold it and throw it into a boat or an RV or something. This light is kind of out in the open, kind of like an apple on a twig. So this is a serviceability issue, and having just a plain old Phillips right here to pop this off and a quick disconnect, you can get this thing replaced, dare I say, instantly as soon as you get the replacement part. The opposite of this is having wires that are very, very tiny, frail, prone to breaking, that go all the way into the entire drive unit, and those are kind of a pain. If they break, it's not so fun. But in this case, you definitely have a really nice set right here that makes the serviceability really high. And that's actually a pretty cool thing to talk about in general with eVelo, is that you guys are an American company here based in Seattle.
We are.
It's not like you got to go across the world or send emails at strange times in order to get a poorly worded answer. So
that is true. We have the lights. Fortunately, we haven't had to send a lot out, but we do have them up in Seattle. If anyone runs into issues, we have customer service support 24 hours. You can reach us by phone, and we have the phone staff 7 days a week.
Oh, that's great. So to continue on talking about the controls up front, so we'll get to the electric stuff in a little bit, but mechanically they actually have what they call a NuVinci optimized on the little placard here. But this is the Enviolo internally geared hub. So in the back, I did kind of mention it looks like a hump motor, but this is actually a set of gears, like mechanical gears inside of this hub that have what they call an infinite range of different gears. So instead of indexing from 1, 2, 3 all the way to 8, it has this band that will adjust the sensitivity or adjust the tension of your pedaling. It's a pretty cool thing. If you haven't tried one yet, they're pretty awesome. And it's paired pretty well with the BBS02 mid-drive system. So I've tried out this motor on a variety of bikes, but I haven't yet tried it with the Enviolo until today. And I gotta say, it works really well together. I'm actually quite impressed. So those controls, of course, are up here. And I kind of talked a little bit about that band where you adjust it, you know, it kind of feels like a throttle. You just twist on this, and it actually has like a small little cartoon of a guy going on a hill. So when you twist it one way, it's as if you're going up a hill and you need less tension on it to get a higher cadence. And then if you twist it the other way, you're getting a lower cadence and far more tension, as if you're going on a flat line. And it looks kind of sensational. You know, it doesn't quite click until you ride it. So definitely recommend trying out one of these, because they're fantastic. You know, they do a lot to make riding a bike much more approachable. You can take someone who hasn't been on a bike in decades and toss them on this, and they'll understand pretty quickly. And it's also an issue for approachability for intimidation, because you don't have to select through gears. As you see, you can just change it right here, and you don't have to worry about starting up the bike. It's not going to break anything. It's not going to be derailing a chain at all. So I definitely like that. That's a nice point. So to kind of continue on, we're kind of jumping towards the back of the bike. One thing about the frame I should mention is that this part called the rear triangle is actually pretty elevated, and they do that so that you can get the chain in and out of there. Is that right for the Enviolo?
That's correct. That's one of the reasons, but it also adds some stiffness to the frame.
Great. And one thing I also wanted John to kind of talk about was what appears to be a derailleur back here, but this is actually just for tension. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah. When people take a look at the website and they'll see the photo of the bike, they'll often ask, hey, it has an internally geared hub. Why do you have a derailleur on there? And while it looks like a derailleur, it's actually a chain tensioner. As the rear frame will articulate, it will cause increasing and decreasing amount of tension on the chain. So as the distance changes, you need something to take up the slack, and that's the purpose of that device. They're less complicated and cheaper tensioners that will have just one pulley wheel on there, but they just don't work as well. So the Shimano Elfine that we use on here, it's been very robust setup, works great.
Oh, great. So yeah, that's a new thing I haven't seen yet, is using this Shimano Elfine tensioner for that system, because you do have a dual suspension setup. So like John was saying, this is going to move in relation to the rest of the frame, and as a result they have to keep the tension on this rear sprocket set like the whole time, and this is a really good way to do that. So it definitely doesn't goof with things. It doesn't look like it's a foreign bike made of strange parts, because this is something much more recognizable. Like you said on the website, someone will say, why does it have a derailleur on there? But you just have one set of gears, or one set of sprockets. Well, one sprocket. You don't have a set of sprocket. So you just got one sprocket in the back here. And how many teeth was that? Was that
18 tooth sprocket in the rear and then 46 up front.
Right. Okay, so 46 teeth up in the front and 18 in the rear. And by the way, if you want to get this guy off, it's not all that complicated. A local bike shop can kind of walk you through it if you need to, but there's a small little pulley here that you kind of undo, and then that will allow you to release it. You have 15 millimeter nuts on both sides if you want to get that off, so it's not something you need special tools for. Another bike shop could be able to walk you through that if need be. We kind of talked about the brakes up in the front of the bike, as well as the tire and wheel assembly. So coming up into the middle section of the bike, so this is the rear damper for the suspension system, and from what I understand, it has 4 inches of travel. Is that right, John?
Correct. So the wheel will have 4 inches of travel. The shock itself moves about 1 3/4 inches, and then the suspension geometry takes care of the rest. It's an air shock, so you can tune it to the rider weight. Look on the side over here. Regular Schrader valve, but if you were to put a regular bike pump on there and start pumping it up, you'll immediately destroy the shock. Although it takes relatively high pressure, and it's actually marked, the pressure range is marked on the shock, the actual volume of air is quite small. So you'll need a dedicated shock pump that has a very small barrel, so it can get lower volume and higher pressure.
Right. So there's an important point. There's a lot of things on here that are user serviceable, especially the lights are really nice which by the way, that also includes the rear light. But on this one, definitely want to get a dedicated shock pump at the very least, and if not, seek some professional local help on doing that, because this is actually something that's pretty important for how the bicycle rides. I mean, it's definitely tuned to be a comfort bike, and comfort means a little bit different for each person depending on not only their preference, but also the way that they ride, the size of the rider, things of that nature. So the seat post, there's nothing too much to talk about on there. This doesn't have a suspension to it. It's a rigid seat post of, if I remember right, it's 31.9 for the diameter on that guy. The saddle itself actually has some pretty good gel to it. It's like a covered gel, so it doesn't have a terribly large footprint, but it's pretty good. I mean, I'd kind of put it right in the middle of an athletic and maybe a comfort print, which is really nice. But if you did want to go all the way and get the most comfortable bike on planet Earth, you could get, you know, kind of a Sir Mix-a-Lot seat on there, and you could put a suspension seat post, and that way you'd have, I mean, you could make it a stretch and say you have a triple suspension with the front, the rear, and also just a tiny bit there. That, you know, in that big seat, you'd be ready to rock. You'd be on a lazy boy going down the road.
Well, it's almost quadruple suspension at that point. The 3-inch tires, since they're on the wide rim, they're designed to be run at low pressure between 15 and 20 psi. You're actually going to have a significant amount of suspension travel just in the tires alone, and that's your first line of defense when you start running over obstacles. So between the tires and the suspension, it's as much comfort as you're really going to need.
Oh, that's great. I'm really excited to take it on a longer ride. We just came down here from the shop, but on the ride portion, I'm looking forward to it. You should have very, very stable video because it'll be so comfortable. Let's talk about the electric system and then get on the ride. I'm excited, you can tell. So with the electric system, it has a 48 volt 11.6 amp hour battery, and these are actually Samsung cells that are right here in the down tube. This is a great place to mount it for stability and for balance. It's really kind of like the go-to spot because of all those benefits. It does have a power button up on the front so you can see the charge level of the battery itself. Hopefully that shows up on camera, but you got like 4 little blue lights to show you the level and then 1 red one that presumably means you got to charge it. So there is a key to get it on and off. This is a particular key that has a little spring inside of the lockout. So if you wouldn't mind, John, I need a third hand.
Sure.
So
you just turn the key and then it's side mounted like that.
Okay, great. And it pulls out from the side. So John's practiced doing it from that side. The natural way usually is where I am with the camera to pull it out that direction. Just comes right out, snaps back into position, which is a pretty simple thing to do. So this motor, by the way, we'll talk a little bit about that, is the BVS-02 Bafang mid-drive motor. And like I said, it pairs really well with the NViolo. I like it a lot. It was very comfortable, very seamless. This is a cadence-based pedal assist system, meaning that the pedal assist kicks in dependent on how much you rotate the pedals. Of course, we're going backwards in this case, but this is what it's measuring when you're pedaling the bike. And it's really cool because you can switch gears super easily on the controls up here, and you don't have to worry about the chain again. And so with that in combination, you can just, you know, twist this to your heart's content and not be intimidated by anything. It's great. It's very approachable. So coming back up to the controls, this is your main display right here mounted in the center. It's actually a color display that lights up and shows you a few things upon startup. So it has this automotive motif of how fast you're going right here in the center, which is pretty good. It does have a throttle. I'll kind of mention that so I can get into the display. It has a trigger throttle or a thumb throttle on the left-hand side. So we'll kind of tilt up the bike and press that down, and you'll see that will engage the mid-drive motor and therefore through the chain, the back wheel. And I got to that just so I could show you that it shows you how fast you're going, both with numbers and also with that little speedometer increasing. You see that green color is kind of filling in as we're going faster. So we'll go ahead and stop it a little bit. Okay. Shows you a couple of other things, your battery percentage up here on the top right, a clock on the top left, your pedal assist level in the center on the bottom, and that increases or decreases based on whether you press the plus or minus buttons. Pretty simple. Goes up to a pedal assist level 5 and then caps out there. You can also press the I as an information button to cycle through a few metrics, a trip set, total odometer, max speed, average speed, range, calories. I'm not sure how they calculate that. And then a timer and trip set again. Also has a control for the lights. So by default, it doesn't have the lights on when you start the bike, but when you press this light button and hold it for a little bit, you'll see the display kind of goes dark a little bit to compensate if you're driving this at night. There's a little indicator up front, but that turns on the front LED light as well as the rear LED light, all integrated into the main battery, so you don't have to worry about switching batteries or trying to find the right ones at the store where they have that big kiosk that has 10 million batteries and you never know the right one. So yeah, that's awesome.
It also has an ambivalent light sensor, so that if you're riding and it gets dark, the lights will automatically turn on.
Oh, is that right? Yep. Oh, that's great. It must be this little guy right here.
That's correct.
Okay, so yeah, that's great. So I'm kind of going a little too far with that. You can just turn it off and let it go, and it'll turn on the lights automatically.
Just cover that up, the lights will kick on.
Ah, okay. That must have been what I was experiencing at the shop when I saw the lights turn on and off, and I was thinking...
And because we keep the lights off to try and save money at the shop. So.
Ah, okay, very green. So that's the electric system. I think that's about everything for it. We talked about the motor inhibitors on the brake handles already. We talked about the lights, the mid-drive, the battery, the display. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump onto the bike. My favorite part. All right, so we're just maybe a couple hundred yards away from the water, and it's a pretty darn steep hill. I'm not sure if there's a sign. Sometimes for steep ones they have a sign that tells you the grade, but it's quite severe. So yeah, right now I got it cranked up to level assist 5, and in pedal assist 5 it's not an issue. Like, I just got to rotate the pedals as a formality and the motor can take me up the hill. That's without doing the throttle. Of course, the throttle has full access to the power at that point, so I mean, it's just taking me up the hill. It's got plenty of power coming from the system, and that's a really nice thing. You know, you don't get this same kind of I guess like hands-off sort of cycling on a steep hill when you get some of the other mid-drive systems that are more catered for the European market. But this one's great, and with the and I want to say Nuvinci but with the Enviolo for the mechanical gearing, it's nice that you can really just switch that at any time, whether you're at a stop or whether you're pedaling. I would say that when you're at a really high torque, like right now when you're going up a super steep hill, it doesn't want to switch a whole lot, so you kind of got to let off just a tiny bit in order for that system to have the tension off of it so you can twist the mechanical gearing. It's not that severe. Some systems like cargo bikes, you have to like stop pedaling completely, but this one you just kind of give it a little bit of a break, and then you can switch mechanical gears. But anyways, I've just been talking about the power the whole time because we're scaling up this super steep hill like it's no big deal and that's a pretty exciting part of it. But to talk about the comfort, I mean, this road it's got a little, you know, it's got a couple of potholes and manholes and things like that, so it's got a little bit for utilizing the suspension, not a whole lot, but the maneuverability is really nice on those big wide tires, so it's a pretty comfy thing. I mean, I talked a little bit about getting a suspension seat post when I was on the water, but in all honesty, that might be overkill. I think that this is pretty comfy from the get-go. You don't have a lot of, you know, room for growth as far as suspension is concerned and comfort, because it's a really, really comfy bike. So, I mean, the mid-step, I didn't really mention that earlier, but it does have like a mid-step. The standover height is not super low, so if you have some trouble getting your leg over like a high bicycle, this one does have a little bit of a mid-step, so it's not as severe. However, it's not a step through, you know, like some people call it a woman's frame. It's not one of those, so keep that in mind. But if you can get on it, I mean, shoot, it's a really comfy bike. It's like we're kind of slowing down traffic. We'll try to sneak over a little bit. Let me show you the front of the bike. Ah, shabams. Okay, I was expecting that curb to be a little more severe. So here we are on kind of a distressed cement slabs here, going around. We're at the local pool here. Let's go ahead and do a little bit up and down, not all around. Yeah, I'd say it's quite stable. Going over some roots. Let's jump off the curb here. Oh my gosh, that was so smooth. This seat isn't lacking either. You know, the seat doesn't have a, you know, the footprint of it is a little more athletic, but it's comfy. I mean, I like it. I think that all the other things on this bike combined have really made it super comfy to ride. Let's try it without hands. There we go. So I got the pedal assist too high because I'm on a flat land. So let's turn it down to level 1. Let's see, kind of a good base spot. Crank it up a little bit. We'll go to level 3. We are kind of on a small hill. There we go. Yeah, those wide 3-inch tires really make it pretty stable. I'm riding without hands, as you can see, and it's not too tough. You know, the slower you go, the harder it is. Okay guys, so here I got you pointed right down at the motor system on the Aries mid-drive. I got it cranked up all the way to level 5 pedal assist, so let's go ahead and ride on the grass. I think this is a good terrain, kind of like a good middle ground for what this bike is made for. So let's go ahead and take it for a spin and show you what it does. Okay, that was a lot of fun. We started out on the grass where it was, not quite as even as terrain, and then we started to get onto the sidewalk. And when we got onto the sidewalk, the cadence was pretty high, and as a result, the motor was trying to keep up the pace with the high cadence. So that's probably why you heard it kind of peak as far as output there. But yeah, this is a lot of fun. I'm quite pleased with how versatile it is. Okay, guys, thanks for checking out the eVelo Aries mid-drive with me. It's been a lot of fun checking this out. I really like the versatility of it combined with the comfort. I think it's a slam dunk. So yeah, if you want to check out the full measurements and specifications and write-up review for this bike, go to electricbikereview.com. There you can compare it with other bikes from eVelo, as well as all sorts of various bikes from the industry. Also, you can go there and participate in the forums if you wish, and kind of ask a question and hang out in the community. So thanks for watching, guys. Ride safe.